Imagine this. A runaway trolley barrels down the tracks. 5 people are trapped on the rails ahead, unable to move. You're standing some distance off in the train yard next to a lever. If you pull this lever, the trolley will switch to a different set of tracks, but one person is tied up on the side track, do nothing. And the trolley kills the 5 people on the main track, or pull the lever, diverting the trolley onto the side track where it will kill one person. This scenario, known as the trolley problem, forces us to confront a deeply unsettling question: is there a universally right answer? In some cultures, specific practices might be considered morally acceptable, while in others, those same practices are met with condemnation. For instance, the death penalty, euthanasia, and even dietary choices can spark heated ethical debates. These differences can make it seem like morality is entirely subjective, a matter of personal preference or cultural conditioning. Yet there's a part of us that yearns for something more, a sense that some things are fundamentally right or wrong, regardless of individual beliefs or cultural norms. On the other hand, moral anti-realists contend that morality is not about discovering objective truths, but about constructing frameworks for living based on human needs, desires, and experiences. They argue that moral values are relative, shaped by cultural norms, historical context, and individual perspectives. From this viewpoint, what's considered morally right in one time or place might be considered wrong in another. The debate between moral realism and anti-realism has profound implications for how we understand ourselves and build a just society. If morality is relative, then how do we navigate a world of differing values? How do we resolve conflicts and build a shared future? Before we delve into the intricacies of moral realism and anti-realism, it's crucial to establish a common understanding of what we mean by morality itself. In its simplest form, morality can be understood as a set of principles that guide our actions and judgments about right and wrong. These principles often extend beyond individual preferences, shaping our interactions with others and influencing how we structure our societies. These guidelines can be explicit, codified in laws and religious texts, or implicit, passed down through generations via customs, traditions, and social norms. Regardless of their form, moral principles serve as a compass, helping us navigate the complexities of human existence. Section 2. Moral Realism. The quest for objective truths. Proponents of moral realism argue that objective moral truths exist, independent of human opinion or cultural context. Just as the laws of physics govern the natural world, they believe there are moral laws that govern human behavior. These laws, they argue, are not arbitrary or subjective, but are grounded in reason, human nature, or a divine order. For moral realists, objective moral truths are solid, enduring, and unaffected by cultural relativism or individual preferences. These truths are not invented, but discovered, waiting to be unearthed through careful reasoning, introspection, or divine revelation. Section 3. Moral Anti-Realism, the Human Lens. In contrast to the realist's pursuit of objective moral truths, moral anti-realism posits that morality is about constructing frameworks for living based on human needs, desires, and experiences. Anti-realists argue that moral values are products of human invention, shaped by cultural norms, historical context, and individual interpretations. For moral anti-realists, morality is much like a kaleidoscope, its patterns of right and wrong constantly evolving based on the perspectives we bring to the equation. They argue that while certain moral principles might appear universal, these are often the result of shared cultural values or evolutionary pressures. Section 4. Navigating the moral landscape. The debate between moral realism and anti-realism has profound implications for how we approach real-world issues. From individual ethical dilemmas to global challenges like climate change and human rights. If we believe in objective moral truths, we might advocate for universal standards of justice and condemn those who violate these principles. Conversely, if we view morality as subjective and culturally relative, we might emphasize dialogue, understanding, and tolerance when confronted with differing moral perspectives. This tension shapes how we address conflicts, negotiate differences, and strive to build a more just and compassionate world. Moral realism rests upon the assertion that objective moral truths exist, akin to mathematical axioms or scientific laws. One compelling argument in favor of this position lies in the power of human reason. Just as we can use logic and deduction to arrive at undeniable truths in mathematics, moral realists argue that similar reasoning can lead us to objective moral truths. Consider the principle of non-contradiction, a cornerstone of logical thought. This principle states that a statement and its negation cannot both be true at the same time and in the same sense. Moral realists posit that this principle applies not only to the realm of logic, but also to the realm of morality. The concept of natural law provides another compelling argument in favor of moral realism. This theory posits that there is an inherent order to the universe, a set of principles that govern both the natural world and human behavior. These principles are reflections of a divine or cosmic order, accessible to human reason and serving as a foundation for a just and moral society. Natural law theorists argue that humans possess an innate moral compass, guiding us towards our full potential as ethical beings. Ethical Intuitionism offers yet another perspective on the nature of objective moral truths. This theory contends that we possess an innate moral sense, a faculty of intuition that allows us to grasp basic moral truths directly. Just as we don't need to consult a textbook to know that the sun is bright or that honey is sweet, ethical intuitionists argue that we don't need complex philosophical arguments to recognize the inherent wrongness of murder or the moral goodness of compassion. Imagine witnessing a child being bullied on a playground. Most of us would experience an immediate, visceral sense of wrongness, a feeling that compels us to intervene or seek help. Ethical intuitionists argue that this immediate moral response is a manifestation of our innate moral sense. Section 4. Beyond mere opinion. One of the most compelling arguments in favor of moral realism lies in its ability to provide a solid foundation for concepts like justice, human rights, and moral progress. If moral truths are merely subjective opinions, then concepts like justice become arbitrary and fluid, subject to the whims of individual preference or the dictates of those in power. Imagine a world where the wrongness of slavery was not a universal truth, but merely a matter of opinion. In such a world, the fight for social justice would be a Sisyphean task, with no solid ground on which to stand and no universal principles to guide our actions. Section 1. The shifting sands of culture. Moral anti-realism challenges the notion of objective moral truths, proposing instead that morality is a human construct shaped by cultural norms and individual experiences. One compelling argument in favor of this perspective lies in the sheer diversity of moral codes across cultures and throughout history. Anti-realists point to the vast differences in what societies have deemed acceptable or unacceptable behavior as evidence that morality is not grounded in universal truths. Consider the wide range of practices related to marriage, family structure, and sexuality that have existed throughout human history and continue to vary across cultures today. For anti-realists, this diversity of moral perspectives suggests that there is no single correct answer to these questions. Section 2. The relativity of values. Moral relativists argue that moral judgments are ultimately relative to the individual or the society in which they are made. They contend that there is no objective yardstick for measuring the rightness or wrongness of an action. Instead, moral judgments are seen as expressions of personal preferences, cultural norms, or societal agreements. Just as what constitutes a delicious meal or beautiful piece of art can vary widely based on individual taste and cultural context, moral relativists argue that what is considered morally right or wrong is similarly subjective. Imagine the act of eating meat. In some cultures, meat consumption is deeply ingrained in culinary traditions, while in others, it is viewed as morally reprehensible. For a moral relativist, there is no objectively right answer to the question of whether or not it is morally permissible to eat meat. Emotivism, another branch of moral anti-realism, takes a different approach to challenging the notion of objective moral truths. Proponents of emotivism argue that moral statements are not expressions of facts or beliefs, but are rather expressions of our emotions or sentiments. When we say murder is wrong, we are not stating a fact about the world, but are instead expressing our disapproval of this act. Imagine witnessing a random act of kindness, such as a stranger helping an elderly person cross a busy street. Most of us would experience a surge of positive emotions, warmth, admiration, perhaps even a touch of inspiration. Emotivists argue that our moral approval of this act is rooted in these positive emotional responses. One of the most potent arguments against moral realism lies in the potential dangers of moral absolutism. Anti-realists argue that if there are indeed objective moral truths, then those who believe they have access to these truths might feel justified in imposing their beliefs on others. History is replete with examples of individuals and groups who have committed atrocities in the name of righteousness, convinced that they were acting on behalf of a higher moral authority. These historical events serve as cautionary tales about the dangers of clinging to absolute moral certainty. If moral realism holds true, and there are indeed objective moral facts, the implications for how we live and interact as individuals and societies are profound. The quest for a just and equitable world takes on a new urgency, driven by the conviction that we are aligning ourselves with universal principles that transcend cultural differences and individual preferences. The fight for social justice becomes a pursuit of objective righteousness, fueled by the belief that we are upholding eternal truths that demand our unwavering commitment. If, on the other hand, moral anti-realism offers a more accurate reflection of the human experience, and morality is indeed a tapestry woven from cultural norms, personal experiences, and evolving social values, then we must learn to navigate a world where the very definition of right and wrong is constantly in flux. Tolerance, empathy, and a willingness to engage in open and honest dialogue become not merely desirable traits, but essential tools for navigating a world where moral certainty is elusive. In the absence of objective moral truths, the pursuit of a just and equitable society transforms from a quest for absolute righteousness to a process of ongoing negotiation, compromise, and a commitment to understanding perspectives different from our own. The challenge then becomes not to impose a singular vision of morality, but to create spaces where diverse moral frameworks can coexist peacefully, where disagreements can be addressed through dialogue rather than dogma, and where the pursuit of understanding takes precedence over the pursuit of absolute truth. The debate between moral realism and anti-realism might seem at first glance like an abstract philosophical exercise, a clash of ideologies confined to academic journals and late-night debates in dimly lit coffee shops. However, the implications of this debate extend far beyond the ivory towers of academia, shaping how we approach a multitude of real-world issues, from individual ethical dilemmas to global challenges that test the very fabric of our humanity. Whether we believe in objective moral truths etched into the cosmos or view morality as a human creation, constantly evolving alongside our understanding of ourselves and the world around us, one thing remains clear. Our ability to navigate the complexities of human interaction, resolve conflicts peacefully, and build a more just and compassionate world hinges on our willingness to engage in thoughtful, respectful dialogue, even, perhaps especially, when confronted with perspectives that challenge our own deeply held beliefs. While moral realism offers a compelling vision of a world governed by objective moral truths, this position is not without its critics. One of the most persistent challenges to moral realism stems from the observation that people often arrive at wildly different moral conclusions. This argument from disagreement highlights the seemingly subjective nature of moral judgments. Imagine a group debating the morality of using genetically modified organisms or GMOs in agriculture. One person might argue it's morally wrong due to environmental risks. Another might argue it's imperative to use GMOs to alleviate hunger. Section 2. The anti-realist tightrope, avoiding moral chaos. Moral anti-realism, with its emphasis on the subjective and culturally relative nature of moral judgments, offers a seemingly more pragmatic approach to understanding the diversity of moral beliefs and navigating a world where there is no single, universally accepted moral code. However, this perspective also faces its own set of challenges, most notably the accusation that it inevitably leads to moral relativism, where anything goes and no action, no matter how heinous, can be definitively condemned as wrong. Imagine a world where the horrors of genocide, torture, or slavery cannot be unequivocally condemned as violations of objective moral principles, but are instead viewed as merely distasteful cultural practices or reflections of differing moral frameworks. This spectre of moral relativism, where even the most egregious acts of cruelty and injustice become morally permissible depending on one's perspective, strikes at the heart of our deeply held belief that some things are simply wrong regardless of cultural context or individual opinion. Section 3. Charting a middle path beyond the dichotomy. The debate between moral realism and anti-realism often feels like a philosophical tug-of-war, with each side pulling in opposite directions. This binary framing can obscure middle ground positions, offering alternative ways of thinking about morality. One such position is moral constructivism, which posits that while objective moral truths might not exist, morality is not simply arbitrary or subjective. Moral principles are constructed through social interaction and reasoned argumentation. Just as we build bridges and draft laws, we can construct moral frameworks that reflect shared values and guide us towards a just world. Section 1. The enduring questions. As we've journeyed through the complex and often conflicting terrain of moral philosophy, we've encountered a fundamental divide between those who believe in objective moral truths and those who view morality as a human construct shaped by culture, experience, and ongoing dialogue. The debate between moral realism and anti-realism, far from being a mere academic exercise, touches upon the very core of what it means to be human, shaping our understanding of right and wrong, justice and fairness, and our responsibility to ourselves and each other. If moral realism holds true, and there are indeed universal moral principles etched into the very fabric of existence, then we have a moral imperative to discover these truths, align our actions with their dictates, and challenge those who violate these fundamental principles. This pursuit of a just and equitable world, grounded in objective moral truths, offers a powerful vision of a shared humanity united by a common understanding of right and wrong. A call to conscious action. So, where do we go from here? Embrace the nuances of both perspectives, recognizing valuable insights into human moral reasoning. Universal principles remind us of fundamental values that transcend cultural differences. Approach moral dilemmas with humility, recognizing diverse perspectives shaped by lived experiences. Engage in difficult conversations with empathy, understanding others' perspectives while articulating our own.